lonely and overweight, until I met a man who loves me for who I really am. Episode 1. The Silence of Your Own World. Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt like you were on the scales of the world, with only extra pounds and emptiness instead of life? Imagine that every glance at your reflection is not just a mirror but a verdict. You are not like the others. You are too big for love and too lonely for happiness. This is where the story of Helena begins. A woman who has everything except a sense of self-worth. The morning in her small apartment begins with silence. No phone calls, no noise from outside, just the quiet beep of the alarm clock and the light from the refrigerator. She walks over to the mirror, stretching in a loose t-shirt that almost hides her stomach. Her gaze slides over her cheeks and shoulders, and questions arise in her mind. What's wrong with you? Why are the scars of doubt deeper than any scar on your body? A monologue constantly plays in her heart, which she hears louder than any music. You don't fit into this world. You are not worthy of compliments. You do not deserve hugs. Sometimes it seems that these words are not born of her mind, but of someone outside, as if this apartment has turned into a courtroom, where she herself has become the judge. She once tried to break this sentence. She was a gym member and counted every gram. She watched every sip of water, but lost only a couple of 100 grams in a week. And in the morning she woke up and fell back into the abyss of self-criticism. Diets gave her a sense of victory for half a day, but in the evening she would dip cookies in a cup of tea, reminding her of the fragility of any effort. At work, Helena kept up the appearance of a true professional, but after 8 in the evening her mind lost all the masks she had acquired during the day. Meeting a friend at a cafe seemed like a salvation, but her friends quickly returned to their own topics. New dresses, beauty treatments, flirting. Her remark, "I'm on a diet today," elicited only a slight laugh and a desire to change the subject. And she silently hid the excess in her bag as if it were a shame, not a living part of her body. After work, TV series. The one more episode, routes solved the problem for an hour or two, until the refrigerator called louder than any plot. Each chocolate bar seemed like a friendly gesture from the world. You deserve at least something sweet. Then she woke up with a guilty conscience, replaying all those pieces of cake in her head, and realized that loneliness was more than just an empty house. And yet she continued to live in this silence. Helena arranged frames with photographs on the shelves, but in none of the pictures was she herself happy. Every morning began with familiar rituals. A morning shower, stretching in her pajamas, coffee in a cup with a crack on the side. It was as if her whole life was made up of drops of everyday life that prevented her from immersing herself in the real world. But what if, behind this familiar silence, something awaited her that she had never experienced before? What if tomorrow a door opened, behind which she heard not emptiness, but a voice capable of breaking the chains of self-condemnation? And who knows why this long journey through darkness is necessary, if the real story will only begin when she finally decides to look in the mirror without fear. I leave you with this question. Are you ready for hope to sound louder than your own doubts? Episode 2. A trip to a public nightmare. Imagine you are going to meet your friends at a cafe, a bright space with vintage lamps, where you can hear the clinking of glasses and laughter from almost every table. Your heart is beating in time with your nervous thoughts. Will there be enough room for me in this cozy corner? Will they laugh at me because of the size of my dress? You're wearing your most comfortable dress, but you feel like you're on a catwalk. Every extra centimeter of your waist screams that you're too much. You usually order a latte without cream to avoid burning calories, but this time you decide to take a chance. Let it be a cappuccino. At the door of the cafe, you hold your breath as if entering the prison of your own complexes. Inside, the aroma of baked goods wafts through the air, and at the next table, girls talk about sales and diets, and you catch yourself thinking that you consider every glance they give you to be a judgment. Your friends greet you warmly, but you understand that your worst critic is yourself. Svetlana praises a new smoothie recipe, Helena jokes about the manager's latest mistake, and you silently mash the plum muffin that the waiter brought to your cup with a spoon. Someone says, "Are you really eating all of that yourself?" You respond with a joke that makes them laugh, but your heart sinks with shame. Now remove the frame in which this is happening. Imagine waiting for a kind word from someone, but hearing only calories and condemnation. Is it normal to suck in air as if it were a fat burner? At that moment, the waiter approaches with a cup of cappuccino. He places it on the table as if he doesn't notice any extra curves. You catch his gaze. It is gentle without a hint of judgment about your weight. "Thank you," you say quietly, and it sounds different than the subconscious kick from within. It was a moment when the world seemed to fall silent, as if someone had pressed pause. Returning home, you put the empty cup on the nightstand and realize, life goes on, but you are still in a cycle of endless self-critical dialogues. You take off that same dress, look in the mirror, and ask your reflection, will I ever feel normal in my own body? The words that flashed through your mind in the cafe did not answer this question. But on the shelf by your bed, you find a book with a radical cover. Love Yourself Without Explanations. You open it at random. Love often comes when you let go of your fears. It may be ironic, but what you read touches your heart and stays with you. The next day, as you leave the house, you notice a cool breeze pushing you toward a new day. It seems to whisper, what if tomorrow you meet someone who doesn't count centimeters? And you think, who could do that? But there is a reason why you are still exploring your own walls instead of going out into the world. This little coffee shop is just the beginning. For now, you are still captive to your doubts, but right next to you is a person who is ready to break down the bars of your fears. And soon you will find out who it is. Episode 3. The Book That Changed Everything. She entered the bookstore feeling as if she were stepping onto a minefield. The shelves stretched to the ceiling, scattered with volumes of all colors, but her eyes searched for one title, the very book with the radical cover. Standing by the shelf, she ran her finger along the spines as if they were mirrors of her fears, and suddenly, a knock. She jumped back from the shelf, and there he was, standing in front of her. Tall, in worn jeans and a shirt that seemed a little too small on his shoulders. He was holding that very book in his hands. An inner voice whispered, "Don't embarrass yourself, say something clever." But all that came out of her mouth was, "Oh, I'm sorry. I think I came for it too." His smile was light, like a ray of light in a dark tunnel. "Don't worry, there's enough for everyone," he said in a voice that sounded kinder than anything she had heard from anyone in recent years. And while she was stumbling over her words, he was already handing her the book. "Thank you," she said quietly. In the library silence between the shelves, they began to talk about poetry. He asked if Varga was really as sad as they say, and she, unable to resist, replied in slang, "Look man, I'm not a fan when sadness stretches on in the lines longer than the poetry itself has the right to. But there's some juicy truth in his text." He laughed, and the sound flew off the wall of books into the open space. "Juicy truth," he repeated, raising an eyebrow. Not everyone can say that." For the first time in a long time, her heart pounded as if it wanted to break through her chest. "That's why I came here." She waved her hand toward the shelves. "I want someone to finally tell me what it's like when words tear your doubts in half." He nodded and held the door open to the small reading corner, where there was an old coffee table and 2 armchairs. "Sit down, we'll test it. I brought some herbal tea with me." She was ready to refuse, but something told her, "Don't stand aside." And now they are sitting side by side. A lamp is burning on the table, and their books lie open opposite each other. "Are you really not afraid of pity?" he asked, sipping from a paper cup. "Pity?" she asked in surprise. "I'm just bored with sympathy. I want real life." He raised his head and looked into her eyes. "I'm not here to sympathize. I want to know what's hidden between the lines of your story." She fell silent. A scene from all those months when she was afraid to open up flashed through her mind. And here was a stranger who looked at her as a mystery, not a sentence. "What is hidden?" she asked herself, then quietly replied, "I'm not sure I know myself." They were silent for a few minutes, while the outside world remained behind the walls of the reading room. And in that silence she realized that for the first time in a long time, she was not afraid to be herself. He picked up a thin blue ribbon from the book and ran his finger along its edges. Then, almost absent-mindedly, he made a mark on one of the poems, the one about hope. "I think this is your page," he said, "because your story begins here." Her heart skipped a beat, but for real. She felt that this man saw not her height or weight, but the depth and pain hidden beneath a layer of doubt. As soon as she picked up the book, she noticed a short note in his handwriting in the margin. A number and the lonely word, "See you." And next to it, a butterfly symbol. A hook for the next episode. Who is this mysterious man, and what does the invitation to meet him again mean? Episode 4. Flaws as My Strength. They left the bookstore and found themselves on a cold stone parapet near the park. The wind played with strands of her hair, and Helena, awkwardly clutching the sleeves of her down jacket, sat down next to him. He twirled a cup of hot tea in his hands and smiled at her confused face. "You know, you have a great waist," he joked unpretentiously, winking. "It's like it hugs me every time I forget to breathe." Helena perked up. She had never heard anyone describe extra pounds as a gift rather than a sentence. She laughed softly and felt something crack in her protective shell. "Listen, man, I really thought everyone was judging every inch of me," she whispered, looking away at the frozen puddles on the asphalt. He bowed his head. "That's what people who are afraid of their own imperfections do. But me, I love imperfections. They make us alive." Then he silently raised his hand and gently stroked her shoulder, as if touching an old photo album with the most intimate memories. Helena suddenly remembered all those evenings when she looked in the mirror and searched for where it broke. She wanted to escape from her own skin, from her round cheeks, from her jawline, from the moles she was ashamed to show. But he looked straight into the eyes of her soul and saw endless space there, not flaws. "Remember when I talked about my flaws?" he croaked and sighed. "I also have parts of myself that I would like to erase. My teeth are like unshaven stubble. The bruises under my eyes look like I don't get enough sleep." She looked at him in surprise. Instead of pity, he opened up even more. "So you're not perfect either," she whispered and felt a smile coming on. "But they're nothing compared to your ankles." He waved his hand at her shoes and laughed. "But you know what's funny? I've learned to love every crack in my soul. Because without them I wouldn't be who I am." Helena felt a wave of warmth rise in her chest. She wanted to say, "I want to love myself that way too." Instead of words, she simply grabbed his hand and held it tightly, as if afraid to let go of the moment. They listened silently to the rumble of cars on the distant street, and images from the past came to life in their minds. Suddenly, Helena shuddered. "Listen, what if one of my old friends sees me with you?" He smiled slightly. "Let them look. I'll tell them that true beauty lies in depth, not in weight." She sighed and began to smile. But then suddenly a different expression appeared on his face, as if he had forgotten that he was laughing. "There's something I haven't told you yet," he said quietly. His gaze changed. Now there was a shadow in it that made Helena feel uneasy. Her heart beat faster and her hands seemed to stop obeying her. She wanted to ask but remained silent. Hiding a small hope in her palms, she felt that their story was just beginning, but sharp fragments of the past were already sticking out of it. Episode 5. Ghosts of the Past. Helena's weekend began with a call from her mother. "Honey, your father and I haven't seen you in so long," she said with a slight note of reproach in her voice. "Come over for Sunday dinner." Her heart stirred like fish in a transparent tank. She caught his gaze in the hallway before leaving. He shrugged and nodded quietly as if to say, everything will be fine. At the threshold of their pot-bellied house, the smell of borscht mingled with the shadows of childhood memories. At the table sat her mother, father, and younger sister, who still knew Helena from the days when she first decided to lose weight following the recommendations in a magazine. Mom immediately said, "How cute you are," she said to him, although her eyes darted from Helena to the guest. "My girl, are you sure you're not hungry?" She huddled in her dress as if trying to hide. Inside, a voice buzzed, "You've broken all the rules." Her father intervened to soften the tone. "Helena, it's your choice. We just want you to be happy." But a moment later, her sister, clapping her plate loudly, whispered, "You always give up on your diet halfway through. How can you be sure that this time your happiness will last more than a week?" The weight of her parents' expectations and her sister's criticism hung over the table. He quietly took her hand under the table, and in that moment she felt all her nerves tremble. After lunch, when she went out into the yard with him to clear the plates, her mother followed them with her gaze. "You know how slim you were at university? What are you doing to yourself?" "Mom, it's my life," she blurted out, her voice tinged with unmasked fatigue. But instead of calming down, doubts grew in her head like weeds. She remembered school, where students would throw dirty looks at her and whisper, "Here comes the chip bag." Her knees shook as she hid in the corner under the stairs, tears streaming down her face like rain. At that moment he slowed his pace, put his hand on her shoulder and lowered his voice. "Don't listen to them. I see the real you." She glanced at him. There was no pity in his eyes, only firm determination. Her face trembled with fear and hope at the same time. She wanted to break away from this scene so that he wouldn't see her weakness, but her hand clung to his palm. At home, while undressing, she found an old postcard in her pocket. "I hope you're healthier than dust. Love, John." Her former lover had sent it a month after the wedding. "You've gained so much weight that I can hardly breathe." The postcard, folded in four, scattered in her fist and reminded her of scars she thought had long since healed. He found her on the sofa with the open message in her hands and her cheeks wet with tears. "What happened?" he asked, gently squeezing her wrist. All her fears instantly turned into words. An onslaught of pain, betrayal, inadequacy. He listened silently, then wiped her tears and held her so tightly that the world around them swayed. "I know it hurts," he whispered, "but these ghosts don't define you. They created you." For the first time in her life, she felt someone's confident hand give her the key to the locked rooms of her soul. And at that moment she felt it, but was she ready to let go of the ghosts of the past forever? Episode 6. Time for Confessions. She opened the door to her apartment and let him in, as if giving him the key to the most intimate place, her soul. The air smelled of roses from the bouquet he had brought and a faint hint of her favorite lavender spray. The sound of their footsteps in the hallway echoed hollowly in the silence, as if pausing all fears and doubts. "It's cool here," he said, and carefully placed the vase on the table. "You've made this place your sanctuary." She nodded, bowing her head. "Here I can be alone with all my junk." He smiled, but his eyes remained serious. "Listen, today I'm not just a guy who enjoys poetry with you. I'm a kind of confession agent." Helena looked at him, her shoulders trembling. "Confession agent? Man, you got me." He leaned over and gently took her hand. "I want to know your truth." The light from the lamp above their heads softened, as if inviting them to slow down time. She sighed and slowly sat down in the chair opposite him. "Okay," she whispered. "I'm afraid that if I tell you everything you'll run away." He leaned closer and looked openly into her eyes. "I won't run away. I'm already here, remember?" She looked up and began from the darkest corner of her soul. "When I was 18 I almost drowned in a lake. Then I woke up in the hospital and the doctor said I was barely alive. Too much water in my lungs, too little oxygen in my brain. I was close to disappearing once and for all." He held his breath as if waiting for her to continue. "Then they told me, you're strong. But the feeling of my own strength turned out to be false. I was constantly waiting for the next storm to come and wash away everything I had achieved. And subconsciously I was preparing myself, with new shoes, a flat stomach, slimmer hips, just to hide the fact that the most important thing in me was being destroyed from within. His eyes flashed with tenderness and harsh truth at the same time. We all carry these storms within us, but they don't wash away beauty, they're droplets on our glass hearts. She thought for a moment. What about you? I heard that when you were a child. He nodded, lowering his voice and wiping his finger on his sleeve. My sister died when I was 10. In an accident. It's my fault because I was sitting in the back of the car. I didn't lose consciousness, I was scared. Even now, I sometimes wake up in a cold sweat, feeling that I could have screamed louder to save her. Her heart ached, so much pain in both of them. She reached out and touched his wrist. Pain is the very flesh of truth, isn't it? He placed his hand on hers and quietly agreed. Yes, there is no healing without pain. They sat in silence, listening to the hum of cars outside the window. And in that silence, a new feeling crept in. They were not alone with their traumas. She spoke again, her voice trembling, but now with inspiration. I don't want to hide these scars. I want you to see them when you take my hand. He stood up and leaned over, touching her forehead with his lips. That's the most important confession. She laughed through her tears and whispered, "Is that all?" He pushed her away with a teasing smile. Almost. He took a small box with parchment out of his pocket and placed it on the table. "This is for you," he said, and took out two small pendants, a butterfly and a key. The butterfly symbolizes your change, and the key symbolizes your open heart. She took the pendant in her hand and felt the weight of the horizons ahead. "Thank you." He laughed loudly as if freed from his last burden. "Just don't lose it. As long as you have it, our souls will always be together." Her heart began to beat faster again, but now a warmth flared up inside her. They had changed each other forever. But behind the thin veil of her doubts, her body shuddered again at the shadow. What if one day I break down and can't be so strong? He took the pendant from her palm and whispered, "We'll break down together." Episode 7, Boiling Point. They woke up together in the morning, but the alarm clock rang only for her. He was already in the kitchen making coffee. When she walked in, she saw his concentrated face. He was looking at his phone as if waiting for an explosion. The name Kelly & Co. flashed on the screen in the group chat. Helena's heart ached as if it were being squeezed in a vice. She sat down at the table without saying a word. He handed her a cup. "I'm sorry, But his sorry sounded so uncertain that she felt a chill on her skin. He remained silent and she snapped. "Who is this Kelly? And why did she send you photos of some blonde with the caption, 'You used to be with her'?" Guilt flashed in his eyes. "Helena, it's not what you think," he whispered and tried to take the phone away. But she pulled her hand away. "She's just an old friend I used to work with." He tried to smile, but his voice trembled with lies. Her soul roared with pain. "Don't say, just. My whole world has turned into a mirror of doubt again. I thought we had already gone through this." Her eyes filled with tears and anger at the same time. Her heart pounded like a hammer in a forge. He sighed deeply and put his hands on the table. "Hey, I'll tell you the whole truth. Kelly, she used to blackmail me with old love letters. I was afraid that if she published them, my whole world would collapse. So I replied to one of her messages." He sighed heavily as if he had given up. Helena stood in the middle of the kitchen, confused. An old picture formed in her mind. The letters he hadn't destroyed in time, and now they were haunting them from the past. "You kept quiet badly," she whispered, bowing her head. "I thought we would never keep secrets from each other again." He came closer and hugged her, but she pulled away. "Don't touch me right now. When I'm hurting, I want to be alone." He closed his eyes as if for the first time realizing how much something had broken between them. A notification sounded in the hallway. Another message from Kelly, a short one. "Let's meet up." Helena saw it and whispered, "Your silence gives her power over us." He didn't know how to respond. The world above their heads had shrunk to this corner of their house. Each step sounded louder than their former embraces. "I need time," she said barely audibly. "Give me time to figure out if I still believe you." He nodded, clutching the key pendant in his hand. "I'm on your side. I'll wait as long as it takes." She took her scarf, glanced at him, and quietly walked out the door. He remained standing amid spilled coffee and half-finished herbal tea. Their shadows stretched across the walls but did not merge. Episode 8. A Look into the Future. A week of silence passes. Helena sits behind the wheel of her old Focus, navigating her way through miles of traffic on her way home. In the marketing department of the company where she works, everything is the same as usual. Tasks, reports, coffee breaks with colleagues who, for some reason, keep asking why she isn't responding to his messages. She hides her phone in her bag and exhales deeply. She needs to clear her head of unnecessary thoughts in order to move on with her life, regardless of how the relationship turns out. After lunch, he sends her a single sentence: "Let's meet at the open window." Helena is surprised. There is no cafe with that name in their city. But her intuition tells her that this is no coincidence. She replies briefly as if playing a secret agent, "Ready." And again she plunges into the usual hustle and bustle of everyday life. On Saturday, they meet on the roof of a high-rise building, where the owners have set up a creative space with large windows facing east. Although everything around them is shabby, the balcony tiles are barely holding on, and an old air conditioner is spewing rusty water onto the asphalt. He smiles and hands her a drawing: a butterfly flying out through an open window. Wild roses grow in the cracks in the concrete. He smiles and hands her a drawing: a butterfly flying out through an open window. "This is your ticket to the future," he says, and his words sound like something more than just plans for the weekend. Helena puts her hand on the sketch. "I've never drawn before, but I've always wanted to open a small gallery. To show the world through people's stories, not just advertising banners." He nods. "Then we'll build it together. In your city or even in the garage where I once assembled my first computer." They provoke each other to dream big. He talks about a 2-week trip to New York. Just getting on a train without a ticket and listening to the huge skyscrapers whisper the strange stories of their inhabitants. She adds, "And then the ocean. Hitchhiking to California." Ironically, "Man, we don't even know where we're going yet, but the approaches already sound like a plot for a blog." They laugh, and the world around them seems to start spinning in time with their voices. In the car, with the windows wide open, they listen to the hypnotic symphony of city noise. Horns, ambulance and police sirens, the hiss of tires and the rustle of the spring wind in their hair. The waves of air rushing through the open windows remind her how long she has forgotten to breathe fully. He takes her by the shoulder and says, "We're not just a couple, we're a team. You're my butterfly, I'm your key. Together we're harmony." The evening descends slowly. The sun hides behind the distant silhouettes of houses. He pulls out another drawing, a sketch of their future gallery. Doors open to the street, a bright wall with bizarre installations, and inside, their smiling faces. Helena looks at him tenderly. "You're so crazy, but I love it." At that moment, a tall silhouette in a long coat appears behind them. Someone stands in the shadows, like an observer of someone else's happiness. The wind rustles the leaves of a wild rose in a crack in the concrete, as if warning of invisible dangers. He squeezes her hand tighter and his eyes flash with sudden alarm. Episode 9, An Unanswered Denouement. Today is the opening of your gallery, a dream that you and he crafted from paper sketches and shared conversations. In the morning, the air smells of fresh paint on the walls, flowers on the windowsills, and a slight tremor of anticipation. The tables are laden with champagne glasses and a crowd is already gathering in the hall. Friends, colleagues, and random passers-by, ready to enter the world you have built with your own hands. He stands next to you, reaches out his hand and gently tucks a strand of hair behind your ear. In his gaze is the same cautious tenderness that whispered, "I'm with you," when you needed it most. You take a breath and feel your knees tremble. You open the door, take a step forward, and applause rings out. They look at you with amazement. Is this really your work? Someone has already bought the first installation, someone is filming a video for their stories. You respond with a smile as if to say, "Yes, it's exactly how I wanted it." The sound of voices dances like the rhythm of your own heart. The slight tremor in your palms slowly dissolves, like ice in a glass of lemonade. But at that moment, a silhouette emerges from the opposite corner of the room. Someone tall in a dark coat, their head hidden in a hood. They stand motionless, like a shadow that doesn't fit into the joyful picture. Even the crowd falls silent, stopping their buzz for a moment as if asking, "Who is this person?" You feel your heart sink into your stomach. This is not just a stranger. You knew he would show up here someday. His face is dimly lit by a beam of light from an exhibition lamp, and you recognize the figure as Kelly. The same Kelly and company who bombarded him with messages and blackmailed him with memories. She doesn't throw her hat on the floor and shout, "Hello," but quietly walks over to the two of you as if she was always meant to be there. He notices her first and nods, clutching the key pendant in his hand as proof of his devotion. He comes closer, but you see the question flashing in his eyes. "Where do I start?" Kelly straightens her shoulders and without looking away says, "It's nice to finally shake your hand. I thought you should know the truth about him." Her voice is restrained, but every word carries the silence of a long night. You step forward and ask, "The truth?" He looks at you, but Kelly's words destroy the comfort you've just created. The inspiration dissipates like smoke from a candle. "She's my former colleague, but not just a former colleague." He begins, but Kelly waves her hand. "I don't need your excuses. I'm here to say one thing. He owes me a lot of money and explanations." And a cold gleam appears in her eyes. The crowd around you thickens and you can hear people whispering, "What is this? And how surreal." You look at him and he lowers his head. A key pendant glitters on his neck, but a quiet voice in the corner of your mind whispers, "This key can now open a completely different door." He sighs and raises his hand. "No, Kelly, stop. I'll explain everything, just not here." But she doesn't listen. "I've been waiting for this revelation more than you have. Now everyone will know who you really were." And her words are so loud, like an explosion, that they knock the glasses out of your hands. You look at the pendant in your palm and feel the ground shaking beneath your feet. You could scream, "Stop," but your throat is dry. Your eyes show a mixture of betrayal and empathy. He walks towards Kelly and you feel yourself losing your footing. Suddenly, the door to the street bursts open. It's a courier with a package. Forgetting about the crowd, he and you simultaneously step toward the exit. Your shoulders bump and your eyes meet for a moment. He reaches out, opens the box and pulls out a letter. "Read this and you'll understand everything." Silence envelopes the room. Then he turns back as if ready to ask you, "Do you want to know?" Thousands of whys spin around in your head, but the only question that escapes is, "What next?" Cameras flash, the crowd whispers a little less than a moment ago, but fills your shared space with the echo of unsolved mysteries. You look at him, he looks at you, and an icy plane of uncertainty arises between you. The gallery lights flicker softly. At this moment it becomes clear. The decision you make in a moment will rewrite your history. But what exactly he wrote in that letter and what you choose remains your secret. And while he waits and you read the first lines, the camera slowly moves away, leaving the viewer with one simple question. Do you love yourself enough to take a step into the unknown? If this story resonated with you and you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe to this channel and don't forget to like it.